What is up, Ram fans? Welcome back to Crackers College Hoops, a channel dedicated to Colorado State University, mostly men's basketball, a little bit of Mountain West. Looking forward to the Pac-12, a little bit of women's hoops as well. Most of you have probably been here. If you're new, hit the subscribe button. You see Bowen here. Bowen's telling you to hit the subscribe button, but we're going to dive deep. We're going to have some fun tonight. This is going to be a great show. Let's see who's out there. Monty here. I'm guessing, hoping 3 to 5 portal guys. What do you guys think? Monty, we're going to get into that, man. Anyway, the whole purpose of this show is who stays. And it's really to look at retention of a roster that is very, very strong with only one senior departing. Jeff Muniz, and a whole lot of guys, and a lot of guys we'd love to have back. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to bring on my buddy Jake Schildgen. Jake is a great Ram fan. He's been on my show several times. Jake is also a data guy and can talk really, really intelligently about a lot of stuff. So anyway, you know, the season is in the books. We just came off a 21-13 overall season. Very solid first year under head coach Ali Farokhmanesh. Hopefully you saw the show I did yesterday. I did my Monday morning cup of coffee show on Tuesday with Marty Lenz. We had Coach Farokhmanesh on for 20 minutes or so, and it was a great talk. Great to have him. A great successful first year with him. NIT appearance. Obviously, we went out in the first round to St. Joe's, but still, all in all, a great season. Now we're staring down. This is the fun time. We're gonna have fun tonight. We're going to look at the 26-27 roster, and there's some big decisions looming. We've got the talent. We definitely have a lot of talent. There's guys like Brandon Rexsteiner, who scored about 12 a game, transferred from Virginia Tech. Carrie Booth, blocking shots, hitting threes from the corner, dunking at the rim, grabbing rebounds. Kyle Jorgensen showing his ability to score both inside and out. Rashawn Mbemba, Nicola Joppa, Darnell Slater, a young core. Pasquarelli, Jace Butler, you name it. We had a lot of guys, but you know, with the system, the way the thing works now, not everybody's going to come back. But we know that. That's just the nature of it. Transfers, eligibility, and the portal mean tough calls on who to prioritize, who to build around, and who might want to think about moving on. And that's obviously their call. We're not going to say move on, get out. The coaches are going to do that, but we're going to prioritize. We're going to come up with a list of players that we would love to have back in priority. Breaking down the returning players by impact, fit into Coach Farokhmanesh's system, upside for next season based upon the growth we saw this year. Which ones the Rams can absolutely can't afford to lose if they want to make noise in the Pac-12 next year. So we'll start getting in it. I'll bring Jake on in a minute. One thing I want to do, I'm going to introduce something new here. I have a poll ready to go. This is something new that was added to the software, and you get to vote. Vote by putting in a number. If you type in 1, you get to vote for Carrie Booth. 2, Jace Butler. 3, Kyle Jorgensen. 4, Brandon Rexsteiner. So I'm going to type in a number just to show you that it works. Look at that. Let us know who you're. Let us know who you who you're looking for. So here we go. Jake, put your number into the real chat. There we go. We're starting to get votes. This is good. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my buddy, Jake Schildgen. Jake, how are you today, man?
I'm doing well, Steve. It's hard to believe that on the Swollapalooza Wednesday we're already a week removed from the end of the season and that NIT loss last week, and that's 3 games ago for St. Joe's. So it's things move quickly in the off season nowadays.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, we're gonna have fun doing this because it's we're gonna pretend we're both we're Calvin Booth, but building a roster. Of course, we're not going to just prioritize his son Carey. We're going to make sure we prioritize the guys that we think are the guys that are most important coming back. But we're gonna build a team. And before we get into the retention discussion, let's just talk about your perspective, Jake, on the 25-26 season. What were your thoughts going in? We had you on. We thought we'd finish somewhere maybe a little better than seventh, but we didn't think we'd be that much better. We did a show before the season, but what are your thoughts on how the season transpired? What you saw, what you liked, and what you thought needed some work?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say it wasn't a frustrating season. I never felt like the team was ever going to hit that real next level gear that last year's squad did. And even if you look at that 8 game run that they had towards the end of the season, if you look at the Torvik ranking over that time, they were still in the 60s to 70s over that span. And so they were, you compare that to the team last year where they went 8-2 to close out the regular season, and they were a top 25 team statistically. And so it just never felt like the team really was going to get to that next gear. And it never really had that upward trajectory that we'd been accustomed to in the Nico Ollie years coming into this year. They entered the season, I think 88 in Torvik, and they exited the season. They're currently 90th. So, they lots of puts and takes through the season. Obviously some injury issues, but a lot of teams in the Mountain West were dealing with injury issues throughout the season. And for me, I think the big thing for me was it was really, the defense was really frustrating. And I think we'll talk a little bit about, I think, the defensive mindset, strategy, and game plan. I think the defensive game plan's really solid, but I think we had some struggles with individual issues, and then also I think gelling together as a team, especially early in the season. I know you talked several times where just switching and picking up, backside help, and especially in the paint, it just never really seemed to click like it did in previous years. But ultimately, I think you said a B or B plus for this season. I think I would probably be in that B to B minus range when you take into account the injuries.
Yeah, it was the thing, we opened 9-2 in the non-con, and I honestly thought that was probably where we were going to end up, 9-2. I didn't count on a loss to DU, but I did count on at least one loss at the tournament in the Bahamas, the Battle for Atlantis, and thought we might lose 2 there. It was a successful non-con, but then the opening to the conference schedule, the injury to Mbemba set them back, and then Jorgensen getting hurt in the first game at Utah State, and that was, I think, just an absolute. It was a shock too to lose by 40 points, getting run off the floor, and then home to Nevada, or home to New Mexico. No, Nevada wasn't it? Nevada was the next game.
Yeah.
Lost that, and then I got totally dominated on the boards. On to Grand Canyon with an upset win at Grand Canyon where they played really well. Home to New Mexico where they got beat by 10, and it was they were in a little bit of a spiral as they struggled to deal with the loss of Jorgensen and Mbemba. And it was kind of a slog that first half of the season, right?
Yeah, and the consistency was really tough, or I should say the inconsistency. Obviously injuries played a part of that, but even if you look at the performances down the stretch, I think when you have this Ollie offense, that's Nico, I said, like the 3, love the 2. This offense is not afraid to shoot threes, certainly. And they've completely abandoned the mid range. I think we'll look at that a little bit later on. And we'll talk about how that plays into, constructing an ideal roster for next year. But it's, I think they were 28th most inconsistent team in the country down the stretch. And that hurts your ability to really, I think, put together meaningful victories, especially when it gets into postseason time.
Was there anything you saw from a I mean, you're a fan, you watch a lot of games. From a coaching perspective, were there things you thought could have been done differently, been done better? Was it more the players maybe struggling to execute, more so than the coaching? Any thoughts on on Ali's first year and the performance of his staff?
Yeah, I feel like there was a tidbit at some point in the season where one of the coaches on one of your shows mentioned um, changing up the scouting that they were doing on the defensive side of the ball. And Ollie mentioned that on your show yesterday. It wasn't just a new team; it was a new coaching staff, and I'm sure they had their growing pains as well, figuring out who had strengths and areas for improvement, and leaning on trying to balance that development with also sometimes you just got to have a go-to person who can give you a good scout or whatnot. So it's tough to tell from being on the outside looking in. All these timeout usage was, I think, interesting for everybody throughout the season. Even in the St. Joe's game, I think he was holding on to a timeout there in the first half a little longer than he should have. But when you have an offense that is so shooter friendly and three reliant, I think he feels a lot of pressure to not get the shooters off their game too much and get in their heads. And really, I think he gives his players a lot of autonomy to try to shoot their way back into a game because he wants them to have that mindset. And I think, at the end of the day, I think that's the right way to go, but you've got to balance it out, I think, with more effort and consistency on the defensive end and taking care of the ball. A couple things we'll talk about.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think we saw, Ali talked about yesterday, as you said, the the development of the chemistry with him and his staff over the course of the year. And, we saw them get better and better, I think, in terms of the lineups they finally figured out. I think the optimal, much better lineups down the stretch, much better sub patterns down the stretch. And while there were times where I'd get really, really frustrated watching certain things. I think that, my perspective was, the game management stuff is about 10%, 90% of what needs to happen to win happens in practice and preparation. And they seem to be well prepared. I can't think of a game where I thought they were just completely not ready to defend whatever the other team was going to be throwing at them. It's just sometimes they didn't execute it very well.
Yeah.
So, hey, everybody out there, keep voting. Right now, Jace Butler is leading in a big way, and we got a three-way tie. Carrie Booth, Kyle Jorgensen, Brandon Rechsteiner. And if you got somebody else you'd like to see, put it in the comments, folks. Is there somebody else that I got this comment here. We'll talk about this. I've heard rumors that Booth is going elsewhere for $1 million bag. You guys think it's true? I'm going to state right now, anything could be true, but I would lean against that. But that's just my belief. So,
yeah, I'm not going to get into that rumor mill. I have no idea. I don't stay in touch with that stuff. Where the cards fall, they fall, and hopefully more of them fall our way.
We're not gonna deny that those offers might be out there. We're just gonna prioritize players. So hey, let's get started. Let's talk about the players. I have Ken Palm, Bart Torvik, and CBB Analytics. Which one do you want me to bring up first, Jake?
Yeah, maybe let's go to Torvik. I like using Torvik, and let's maybe go to if you go to the team history tab, let's kind of look at this season in comparison to the last several seasons under Nico.
Let's see. There we go. Hang on. Let's go. Where do you want it?
Yeah, you want to pull up the CSU team page?
Oh, yeah.
Probably still in that 90 range.
Yep. There we go.
And then click on team history right there under the Mountain West Conference.
There we go.
Yeah. So I think for this section, we want to talk a little bit about strengths and weaknesses, things that we need to preserve as a program and things that we need to augment. And, I think starting with the strengths, I mean, this is no doubt the best shooting team of the Ali Nico era. If you look at the effective field goal percentage, driven by their 3-point shooting, I mean, a tremendously good shooting team. Now they did dip a little bit on 2-point percentage shooting, but still, I mean, a very, very efficient offense by all regards, except for their turnover rate. And that's obviously something that's been hit on throughout the season, and is something that, Ali mentioned yesterday on your show, or on Monday on your show, and something that has to be addressed. And I'm not sure if you're going to address that with just retention. So, I think, when we shot above the D1 average from 3, we were 17-4 in terms of win-loss. And when we shot below the D1 average for 3-point percentage, we were 3-9. So we've got to keep that going. And I think really the takeaway is, how do we turn that 3-9 performance when we're having a bad shooting night? How do we turn that into 6-6, get 3 more wins out of this
9-3, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And so, I think keeping that shooting mindset alive. I continue to get to the free throw line. I'm curious how much of that may have been strategy from other coaches. That really started in that DU game. If you remember, when they just decided that they were not going to let anything go in the paint, and they just would hack CSU players anytime they got in the paint, and force them to make free throws and perimeter shots. Who knows if that's what's influencing the number, but I think that's a good trend that we should try to keep going.
Yeah, as you point that out, it's an interesting thing, because I think teams have chosen to defend CSU and their cuts, the backdoor and all the cuts, by fouling them when they go to the basket. And so I think the free throw rate is up, and I think it takes it knocks down the percentage of 2-point field goals that they score relative to 3-point field goals. But a lot of teams defend that way now, and it's just we saw it in the DU game, like you mentioned, but even teams like Wyoming defended by fouling at the rim. Who else? UNLV was defending by fouling at the rim. They foul a lot, and that is something to look at, though. And I will say this. We'll talk about it with certain players. Some players are pretty good about getting to the free throw line, and that's a very, very important thing to do. So
yeah. So I think in terms of strengths, those are the main things, and we'll kind of recap this when we talk about, all right, how do we translate this into what we should focus on in the portal. And then I think for what can improve, I talked about the inconsistency. Again, 23rd most inconsistent team in the country over the course of the season. And I really think it comes down to when you have an offense, or last year you talked about that steady wave of the CSU offense that just would keep pounding away, and it's like a good run game and on a football team would just wear you down over the course of a game. This year felt more like, I don't know if it's the best metaphor, but more like a tsunami, where you would get these big rushes of points and then long stretches of kind of nothing, allowing teams on the defensive side, I think, to really settle in. And I think that hurt our ability to put good runs together. And especially when we get behind by 5 to 10 points, it never felt like we could put together a run to get back to a lead. So, and I think, what it really comes down to is, when you have an offensive game plan that is slow, you look at the tempo number up there, and you talked about this, I think probably, maybe a month into the conference season, we played extremely slow through good chunks of the year. And when you play slow and you have an offense predicated on taking threes, you're not aggressively going off after offensive rebounds, and you're not playing high pressure D. You can't turn the ball over. You can't miss layups at the rim, you can't play lousy defense, and you can't give up offensive boards because you can't piece together enough possessions to get those back. And so I think those are clear areas where this team struggled relative to not just historical CSU teams, if you look at those three tourney teams, but I think other teams that were at the top of the Mountain West.
Yeah, I the tempo thing was a major concern, and they got a little faster with the lineup change when they pulled. They went to the Mbemba Jorgensen combo to start, and things really bogged down. And once they got those guys split up and sharing the five position, it seemed like the number of possessions went up a few per game, and we got a little bit more effective. But again, the points you made, the when you're a low possession team, you sure as heck better not give up many putbacks. And this team gave up a few too many
Yeah.
putbacks. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Anything that you would add on strengths to build upon for next year, or clear areas of improvement?
Well, the turnover thing was huge, and Ali brought that up yesterday, and he brought up the defense. He was not happy with the way they defended this year.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see a little more ball pressure by the guards. I think the lack of ball pressure makes it too easy for offenses to run at their tempo when they play against us. And I pointed out after the St. Joe's game, St. Joe's it wasn't like they were trying to steal the ball, but they put pressure on the ball, and you take a team out of its rhythm just enough, and that over time results in more missed shots when you're not in rhythm. And I'd like to see us get a little more disruptive. I think structurally they got better and better, but I just don't think there was enough ball pressure. And I think that says a lot about what we need to be looking for in terms of guard play next year and
Yeah.
improvement. So let me ask you something here before we get into talking about the players. Do you how much organic development do you think has to take place with this roster in order to get to where they want to go, meaning compete for a Pac-12 championship, earn an at-large bid? Can we even do it with what we could potentially bring back, or do you foresee needs right away in terms of going into the portal?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's some big question marks. And we'll get to this. I really want to believe that the Kyle Jorgensen that we saw in the non-conference is the Kyle Jorgensen that we could see year round. I think, obviously his injury derailed him, and I don't know how. He obviously never got back quite to that level in conference play. So I think Kyle can be, that top three Pac-12 big man. Kerry Booth, I think certainly, he's got to contribute probably another 5+ points per game. And he's got to continue contributing on the rebound side. And then I think defensively, continue doing what he's doing. I think he could be top three Pac-12 4. And then the question is, you've got Pasquarelli, Butler, McIver. Where do those three fit? I think JoJo, if we want to have a chance of being, I think, a competitor in the Pac-12, I think it really rests on JoJo coming through and becoming that point guard, because I think we need to. And when we talk about roster construction, I think we need to invest in getting that wing to fill out the roster, because I don't see where that piece is on the team currently. I don't think John McConan's going to be there 2 years from now. Maybe, and maybe one of the freshmen this year or next year hit, but I think if JoJo comes through, I think between Butler, Pasquarelli, and Rex Steiner, I think there's two really good options at the two. And then I think the question is, can you get a wing that can immediately contribute within 2 years?
Yeah. I'm going to bring up this chart here. so we can talk about the players themselves. And let me get here. Jeff Muniz, by the way, Ali made some kind of reference on my show yesterday of getting Jevin a fifth year, and we're not even going to talk about that. Of course, we'd love to have Jeff back, but let's not get into him. Let's go through the players one by one. Let's go through Rex Steiner. What you liked about Rex Steiner, areas that you think he needs to get better.
Yeah, I think, Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli are, at their volume, they're both top 40 3-point shooters in the country. And Jace Butler would be right there with him, I think, if he shot similar volume. So, if you look at Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli's stats side by side, they're very, very similar. And I think the question is just in a world of finite resources, can you afford to keep, 3 2 guards? And if you did, would they even be able to play up to their full potential if they were sharing minutes? So I like what I do like about Rex Steiner is I do think his mid-range game is the most developed of the team. I think we just need to be able to put him in a position to do what he does well. And I think that means having a clear point guard alongside him who can draw defenders off of him and get him the ball and let him, spot up and shoot.
You talked about Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli being so similar in terms of their profiles, and whether they can coexist. Let's leave Jace Butler out of this for now. But Rex Steiner, Pasquarelli, do you see similarities to the 24 team with how Josiah Strong and Jalen Lake were used? Because they pretty much shared the same position, but they also saw some time together. Do you see similarities there, or are they just?
I think
not a good one.
Yeah, I think the problem is I think Jalen had the defensive aspect, which I don't know if Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli have. And so I think they're more similar perhaps than Josiah and Jalen's games were. And so I don't know how complementary they are on the floor together. Because I don't know if you would want to run out a rotation long term where you've got Rex Steiner or Pasquarelli at the 1 and then the other at the 2, and then a wing Carey and Jorgensen. And if that's not the case, well, I don't think you can have a point guard on the floor and then have Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli at the 2 and the 3. So I don't know. Maybe there's something in the X's and O's that the coaches see or that you see that maybe there's a more symbiotic relationship. But I think, like I said, I think we got to figure out what we want to do with that 2 spot.
Gotcha. Let's talk Jace Butler.
Yeah. If we're talking about priority, Jace is third highest for me, and I'll get into that for a little bit. In terms of current production, when we talk about roster priority, I think it's a mix of replacing and maintaining current production, who's got upside, and then who's strategically important, relevant to the game plan. And I think statistically Jace was our best player from February to the end of the season, and I think anybody who watched games could realize that he was most consistent on all aspects of his game. He shoots 3 well. He gets fouled at a higher rate than the other guards, and he plays better defense. And so from a current production perspective, I think he's extremely valuable. In terms of ceiling, I think he can replicate what Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli are doing from 3 on that type of volume. I think the question is, and you've brought this up before, it's, can he add that really good ball handling to his repertoire? And can he be the defensive cornerstone? I don't know if he could be the primary ball handler. I don't know if he can be the primary facilitator and distributor. But I do think he could be a defensive cornerstone and also, provide production on the offensive end. So I think Butler's is top 3 in terms of, I think, most important retains.
When you talk about the ball handling thing, I think that's the kind of the biggest question because if I've heard from other people that if you go back to kind of his prep days, he was more of a point guard with a facilitator type, and he hasn't been asked to play that role. Of course, that's one thing. The second thing is playing at the prep level is different than playing at the high level Division I level in terms of ball handling and whether he can be a facilitator. He's obviously a good player, a heady player. He's a good passer, but is he a facilitator to get other people buckets? And I would think that would be something that would have to come. That there'd have to be some organic development to see him to do that as soon as next year. You'd have to have a major summer out of him. I'd love to see him maybe spend a summer with Isaiah Stevens.
Yeah.
Something like that to learn how to learn the facilitating. We're going to lose that with Muniz being gone. We're losing that, but I think, as you said, Jace is an important player. Let's talk Kerry Booth, man.
Yeah, and I've got, we're working up my list. I've got Kerry at 2, and I think, in terms of current production. So in terms of points, he's third. He contributes the third most points on the team. He's first in rebounds. He's first in blocks. And I think clearly he's got the highest ceiling of anybody on the team. I mean, he's got 3-point shooting. He's got athleticism. He can drive. He can run in transition. He can handle the ball fairly well for a player his size. And he's got the defensive attributes. Before the season, we had talked about kind of the different types of players that had come in, and Neek really started that Power 5 outcast model, and it's been followed by guys like Ethan Morton, and now Kerry's the latest example. If you look at Neek's jump from his last year at CU to his first year at CSU to his second year at CSU, he added about 5 points a game that first year at CSU, and then he added another 5 points a game that second year. And I think Kerry can get there and hopefully more. And so I think from a ceiling perspective, I think he's extremely valuable, and he's the kind of player that I think if he was there now, I think there would be no question you'd be talking about $1 million number, because players of his athleticism and shooting and width and range are just not commonplace in the market.
The thing with Kerry, I agree with everything you said. I love his potential. I don't think he's going to be. I think he's got to put on at least 15 pounds in order to be as effective as he can be, and he's got to get stronger. He gets pushed underneath the basket a little too much. He gets kind of going to the basket. He's getting better and better going to the basket, but he gets knocked around a little bit too much. And I think if he can get a little bit stronger, I think we're looking at somebody who I think can be an all-conference level performer. But he's got all the tools. We saw a major leap from where he started this year. We saw what he can do. The game obviously against San Diego State, against a very highly athletic team. The game in Moby, where he just absolutely killed their front line, both inside and out. But I think he's got to get stronger.
Yeah, I think he could be a great equalizer for this team. He's the most all Pac-12 looking player on the roster for sure.
All right, let's move on. Kyle Jorgensen. Let's talk Kyle. I'm going to guess he's your number one guy.
And now he's my number one guy. So, I talked about current production, ceiling, strategic relevance. current production, he's second in points, second in rebounds, third in assists, second in blocks. Like I said, if you look at who he was in the non-conference, he was a top 50 player in the country from November and December. And I believe that's more indicative of what I think he's capable of than, what we saw post the injury. But even if his ceiling isn't quite that high, you just look at how important that 5 position is in this offense and how much this team has struggled when Kyle was out, when Rashawn's been out in previous years. When you've had a good player at that 5, and Pat Cartier who can set screens, who can turn and back down a player, who can dish from that spot. If we went into next year without Jorgensen at that 5 spot, even if we brought in a high quality 5 who can shoot, who can run, who can defend, I would be uncomfortable about how long it would take them to get going in this offense. And so that's why I personally think Kyle's number one most important retention piece.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Having bigs, the fact that the bigs are so important in this offense and the way it runs. When you have experienced bigs, you have a head start on the summer with getting people integrated, getting new players up to speed. If you have to worry about the bigs, it's a tricky thing. Excuse me for a second. I gotta. Thank you. I have a little chatter going on in my kitchen.
That's all right.
So a little disagreement going on. I'm sure people can hear it and don't need to hear it anyway.
They must be watching the live stream. So,
so let's go from Kyle, Josh Pasquarelli. We talked about him again. Similar profile to Rex Steiner. Maybe not as aggressive a mid-range game, but when he went into the mid-range or went to the basket, he would score. He was effective, shoots a high percentage. What else you want to say about Josh?
Yeah, I had somewhere in my notes. Let me see if I can pull this up, because he shot something like so in conference play, and obviously he was injured, but he shot 30% from 3 in conference play, which is a little bit below the D1 average. He still shot 42% on the year from 3, which is just astronomical. If you look at what he did in the non-conference, obviously the CU game, those games in the Bahamas, in previous years, Ali and Nico have talked about a microwave, a player who can come off the bench and just immediately give you a quick 6 to 10 points. I think he could probably do that better than anybody else on the team. Again, it's just a question of, I don't see in a world of limited resources. I think you're really horse trading when you look at Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli.
Yeah, the one thing that I noticed, and he's really, really good at shooting corner threes. High percentage, almost 48% out of the corner, which is about 10 points higher than the average. Really good corner shooter. Rex Steiner tends to be more of not a corner guy, but a guy who shoots well from the front, from the top of the key. Pasquarelli a little better from the corner, but both lethal shooters and maybe a little bit of redundancy. Let's move on to Augie Kiadoulis.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say Augie and Rashawn are in a similar situation too. And this is something that I didn't realize until I pulled it up today. If you look at Augie and Rashawn's numbers through the year, now obviously Rashawn was hurt at points. Augie had playing time, but if you look at from 3 points, so Rashawn shot 5 for 10, 50%. Augie shot 13 for 32, which is 41%, relatively similar, shooting rates. From 2% over the course of the entire season with all those different factors, Rashawn was 48 of 79 from 2. Augie was 47 of 79. So they shot the same number of 2s, and Rashawn made one more across the course of an entire season. And from the free throw line, Rashawn shot 59 of 82 on his free throws. Augie shot 59 of 85. And so it's remarkable to me that over the course of a season, two players who had such different stories could end up with such similar stat lines. And it's the same thing. I know you talked about, I think you were really excited about Augie coming into the year. And I think you mentioned on some of your late season shows, whether we couldn't put him in a position to be successful or he couldn't fit in the right lineup. I don't think he ever got to, or he certainly never got to where he was performing at VMI. And I think the question with Rashawn is, this is, several seasons now where we've had injury issues through the year. And so similar to the Pasquarelli Rechsteiner situation, I don't know if you need to pick one and go forward. I love both of their games. I think they could both be, third team Pac-12 kind of guys if they stay healthy and can get in the right situation. But I just don't know if that's actually going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm with you on that. The thing about Rashawn, the injuries have piled up. He sets great screens. He understands the offense. He does a lot of good things, but the injury thing, it makes it hard for him to be dependable game in and game out, and that's unfortunate. That's all I'm going to say about that. And with Augie, very talented player. Just I don't know if he's suited for a bench role, and I'm not sure if he's going to beat out a Kerry Booth, and so we'll see. I mean, I'd love to see him stay, but a little lower priority. The last person I want to talk about, JoJo McIver. Talk to me about JoJo. Your thoughts on JoJo?
Yeah, and I haven't been paying attention to all the chats that have been popping through here, but if we talk about high, medium, and low, so in order for me, it's Kyle, Booth, Butler, and I've got JoJo at number 4 on the retain list, and because of what we talked about at the beginning of what this team struggled with and what Ollie mentioned yesterday and what we all experienced throughout the season is this team severely lacked a clear ball handler point guard. And that's despite the fact that, Jeff Mooney's led the Mountain West in assists. And so not only do we need to replace a tremendous amount of assist production, but we need a player that can handle pressure, can not just get assists by, shooting the ball through to a guy that's cutting, but can actually, pick up the dribble and pick up defenders off the dribble and open things up for his teammates around him. We had obviously the great fortune of experiencing one of the best or the best ever in school history for 5 years with Isaiah Stevens, and Nick Clifford played that role last year. We've got to find a way to get a player like that back in the system. And JoJo, obviously, if you look at the numbers, not impressive over the course of the year. But one thing that I did want to bring up, if I can find my notes here, you look at JoJo over the course of the conference season, and you compare it to the easy reference point, which is Casey Evans' freshman year, and over those conference seasons. So JoJo averaged 11 minutes a game, and in total in conference play, he scored 54 points, which is certainly not anything too impressive. I think that's about 2 points a game. But Casey Evans, who had a tremendous sophomore campaign, parlayed that into $1 million bag at North Carolina. His freshman year in conference season, he averaged 4 points a game, and he scored 16 total points over that stretch. And so I think I think we're going to see a substantial jump in JoJo's production his freshman year to his sophomore year. And in a world where, we have a NIL figure that we have relative to some of the teams, not just in the Power Five, but also in our peers in the conference, you've got to keep finding players like JoJo where you can develop them and get them at a discount and get at least a good season out of them before maybe they burst onto the scene and find something else elsewhere. JoJo's number 4 for me in terms of retain.
Yeah, the thing that, and you brought it up, the parallel. I think JoJo's numbers, if you look at his efficiency numbers, were better overall as a freshman than Kyan's were. JoJo played a lot more in terms of what I would categorize as strategic minutes. Kyan was Isaiah Stevens' caddy that first year, where he'd come in and give him a 2-minute rest in the first half and a 2-minute rest in the second half, and so I think he's ahead. But the question is, can he develop? Can he become the player that Kyan became midway through his sophomore year? Kyan struggled the first 10 games of his sophomore year as well, and then he started clicking. Still had a few ups and downs, and then when we got into the conference season, once the Nevada game rolled around on the road, we saw a different Kyan Evans for the rest of the season, and as you said, parlayed it into a pretty big bag from North Carolina. But I think it's a question mark. Can he develop? But I think there's signs that he can, and we'll just leave it at that. So anyway, anybody else you want to talk about? I mean, we can talk about Darnell later, John McConan, Nicola Joppa, but I think they're a little lower priority. Am I right?
Yeah, I've liked. I mean, Nicola Joppa, similar story to Augie. Just has never seemed to find his footing for whatever reason. John McConan got a lot of great accolades in the off season, but he's still young. And Darnaz, he had that huge UNLV performance, obviously, and love his game. But, just the reality is, I think every year, and you heard this yesterday, I think every year it's how do you build the absolute best starting 5 you can and hope that you can keep a good stable of bench guys coming in that are okay taking a couple minutes here and there. And some of them might hit, some of them might not.
Yes, I just saw this question. Do Isaiah and Nick have younger brothers?
Not that I know. I think Nick's got all older brothers, right?
We wish. That would be fun. Let's go into your priority list. You had Kyle Jorgensen 1. Why don't you go through your list?
Yeah. So like I said, in terms of I think the top 3 priorities are keeping Kyle, keeping Carey, and keeping Jace Butler. And I do think it is kind of in that order, because I think if you look at the replacement market for those guys, I think it would be much harder to replace the top 2 than Jace, although I love Jace's game. So if you can keep those 3, then the question is, you got to find 8 points per game in the portal to replace Jev, and you're probably going to need more to replace a surprise portal loss that we're going to see. So how you get 8 points a game? I like the Power 5 outcast model. I think that's been a good model for us. One of the things we talked about, if you look at the transfer up that we've had historically, those have been a little more hit and miss. Great players certainly, but not the consistent impact that we need. So finding 8 points a game, I think, from a Power 5 player who's being underutilized is number 4. And then in my opinion, what I would really like to see, and this goes into the JoJo conversation, if you keep Kyle, you've got the 5. If you keep Carey, you've got your 4. If you keep Jace, I think Jace is your 2. I think you gotta put your chips on JoJo at the point guard spot. And I would really like to see a veteran wing who can be another lockdown defender. If you look at those three tourney teams, each one of them really had at least two, and I think more often three really elite defenders. And we're missing that. And so I would like to see even like an Ethan Morton or a Chandler Jacobs type, a long defender who can just come in and really just be a stopper on the perimeter to really balance out our defense, allow, Carey and Kyle to play straight up more, allow the other guards to play straight up more. That's what I would like to see. So that's my 5 right there.
Yeah. Before I get into that, I got some good comments here before I reveal my list. It's a little different than yours, but comment here. I would like to see CSU go out and get the best. You're talking. This is exactly what you talked about. A 3-and-D wing they can afford in the portal. Same thing, same kind of comment there, but also keep your bigs. If you can keep your bigs, I like the state of your bigs more than your guards also. So maybe the best point guard for. Anyway, I've got other comments here. Here we go. So long term, I don't think McIver's the answer at point guard. We'll see. I think that's a roll of the dice, and I think we're gonna live with that one. Here's another comment. Jorgensen improved so much over last year at the beginning of the year. If he does that again, look out. That's what you were talking about. Is the first half of the year he was a top 50 player. After the injury, he was a little, I would categorize it as he had some good games and some not so good games. He got a little inconsistent, and the last few games he was not very good at all. From the Boise game on, he did not play very well, and I always wonder if something's bothering them when that happens, when all of a sudden they fade. But if he can make the leap again, and here's another one. I talked about Booth having to put on weight. I think Kyle has to get stronger as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can see the biggest jump that we've historically seen is that freshman to sophomore year jump, and then it for the most part, unless you've got an NBA quality player like Roddy and Stevens and Neek, they plateau a little bit after that sophomore year jump. I don't know if we'll see another big jump out of Kyle next year and in the year after if he sticks around, but I certainly think he's going to be much closer to that non-conference player than he was who we saw at the end of the season.
Oh, here's another comment here. Fans from Minnesota have Kyan Evans and Jorgensen high on the portal wish list. I don't have any inside information on either one of them. I wish I did. I wish I could say for sure Jorgensen is coming back. I can't. I have no idea where Kyan Evans will be next year, but I'm pretty sure it won't be North Carolina after what happened to him this year. But I talked to a very, very smart person about this, and his belief was Minnesota is a possibility, but watch out for Iowa. Iowa with what's his name? Ben, what's his name? Coaching them. They're in the Sweet 16. Their point guard, Bennett Sturts, is gone. They need a point guard. Kyan's ex-teammate Cam Manyow plays for them, transferred from Wyoming to Drake to Iowa. Another former Wyoming player, Cale Combs, is there. And somebody made me aware that Kyan's parents are from the state of Iowa. So they grew up, they lived there. They're in Kansas City now. But Iowa could be a good destination for Kyan as well. That's those insider information from somebody I talked to. So
those relationships are big in the portal world. We've seen those boomerang players a handful of times ourselves. So
yeah, I got a banner prepared with my priority order. This is mine. I'm gonna close down the poll. Let's get rid of the poll. Jace Butler, the winner. Very small number of votes, but that's okay. We'll close that down. But I'm a big Jace Butler fan. I think from a leadership perspective, That's a guy who's going to be, you need a backcourt leader to start with, and I think he's the best position to be a backcourt leader out of all the current roster. I have Carey Booth 2 and Kyle Jorgensen 3. Again, this is I believe that the point you made, Jake, about the importance of the big men. Big men are harder to develop. You don't, unless you're a one and done type of big man, um, it usually takes 2 to 3 years to develop bigs. And you got Carey going into his fourth year and really his third year. He missed a year at Illinois. Kyle Jorgensen going into his third year. They are primed to be make be major factors moving on next year. I have Rex Steiner Pasquarelli as my next two, and I have them kind of in a similar way. They're a luxury to have both of them. I'd love to have both of them. I'm not sure we're going to be able to keep both of them because I don't see how you can offer them enough playing time. Seriously, I just don't see it. I don't see them each getting 25 to 30 minutes next year because of somebody, Jojo McIver, who I think is going to continue to get more minutes. I would like to keep Rashawn, but again, the injury thing has me a little bothered, and I worry that it's not necessarily a priority. Jojo's important, but I don't know. Again, it comes down to, can Butler develop as a point guard, develop into a distributor, facilitator. If he can't, then JoJo is obviously very, very important, and have Augie eighth. The other guys, I'd love to see him stay. Docker Tedeschi, we haven't even talked about him. He redshirted as a freshman. He'll be back, I'm sure. He might get some time. We have 3 freshmen coming in as well. I'm not even going to, I don't even know of those. I think the most likely to play will be guard Pops Dunson, only because it's easier for guards to step in than it is for wings and bigs to step in
Sure.
out of high school. And Pops may end up being somebody that, the thing I worry about on the guard side, if you have Butler, Pasquarelli, Rex Steiner, and JoJo, that doesn't pave the way for much development for Pops.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves over time. I do, and, I don't know how much of it is just a function of the coaching transition last season, but the roster is a little imbalanced currently. And, so a lot of these guys were unknown quantities. I mean, Jace was of the names up there. Jace was maybe the least known quantity coming into the season. And, you just like the NFL draft, you hit on some, you don't hit on others, and you've got to adjust and move on. Your Rex Steiner and Pasquarelli at 4 and 5, is that a 4 and 5 or is that a 4A, 4B? I'm curious your thoughts after our conversation.
It's a little bit, it's exactly a 4A and 4B. I would love to have both. I want to make sure we have one of them. I like having the great shooting. I don't want to give up. It's hard to say no to a 40+% shooter, volume 40% shooter, and that's what they both are. So that this offense needs at least one of them. And like I said, it might be a luxury to think that you could have one of them only play 15 to 20 minutes a game. I'm not sure that's what they'd be looking for in their senior year. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the plans are. I have a question here, comment, JoJo or Pops. I would hate to see things back up so much that Pops doesn't get a shot at playing. This kid is really, really good. He's state champion in Georgia, highest ranked recruit coming out of high school that CSU has ever had. Was recruited by Auburn. He's fast. He's lethal. He can shoot. And when you say JoJo or Pops, one of the things I would be interested in seeing is maybe JoJo and Pops. If Pops is as good a defender as I think he is, the two of them together in a backcourt could be a very dynamic, fast, athletic, young duo to come in off the bench. So who knows? I don't know.
Well,
I haven't seen enough of him, but yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would love to see a Jay Collar or Uriah Tenet situation. It would be really nice to see a freshman hit as big as those two did in their first year. And that's a season changer.
Absolutely. Winning is high when Rashawn plays. There is truth to that, and I recognize the importance of that. The problem is the only issue with Rashawn is availability. It's not ability, it's availability.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did a lot of regression analysis to try to find correlations between numerous numbers and ultimately wins and losses. And we talked about inconsistency. There's almost no statistically relevant number other than just the 3-point shooting. And even on Rashawn, I looked at that for minutes and shots and other things, and there's no consistent. I don't know if that applies as much. And even if he's in, I think it's a question of, I don't think he's 100% when he's in down the road. So,
Yeah. So
but and if you were to go portal shopping, who are you going portal shopping, Mr. GM?
that's a the portal shopping thing. I think the 3-and-D wing. It would be, you think of the success of a Jev Muniz, who played. He's kind of a less athletic, less creative Neek Clifford, but it had a lot of the characteristics of Neek in terms of his ability to facilitate and distribute the ball. Very, very good passer, just like Neek. Do we need something like that? And can you actually find something like that? I don't know. But that's the one area I would look at, and I think without knowing who's staying and some of these other players, if we can go out and find a Kerry Booth like project um, in the portal, where somebody big who's ready to maybe develop, that hasn't been getting much playing time his first couple of years, and maybe ready to take a stab at uh, at uh, at coming to CSU, maybe a decent 3-point shooter uh, it, as a big. We'll see, but something like that as well. I mean, I'd love to see Rashawn stay, Augie stay, but not at the expense of if you can find players that maybe are a little healthier, a little better shooters. That somebody with maybe a little more upside, like a Kerry Booth.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got great pieces. I think we need to streamline the roster a little bit. And that's a lot easier said than done nowadays.
So just before we close, we're getting ready to close here, but what, how many, if you could pick a number of players as an absolute minimum you'd love to see stay, what's your number?
Yeah. And there are statistics on this. I didn't brush up on these beforehand on what an ideal returning production amount is, but I think I would love to see, you know, I'd love to see 6 players stick around. I think we walked through what probably for maybe 10 or 11 players. I would love to see 6 of those stay.
Yeah, I was trying to do a similar kind of thing, and if you look at you look at the top four that I have, and it's a little different with the top four you have because you have JoJo as one of your top four, but that is roughly 50. The top four I had of Butler, Rex Steiner, uh, Jorgensen, and Booth. That's roughly 50% of your minutes, roughly. And 50% of your minutes is a lot in today's in today's world. If you can retain 50% of your minutes, you're doing really, really well.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we can retain more than that. But if we can keep four, four of our top five, I would be ecstatic, and then go from there, because it's just going to be it would be a good starting point. I think we have the right kind of players, and I think they showed enough last year, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice because we're gonna have a pretty brutal midseason tournament in Thanksgiving break that we're gonna need to be firing on all cylinders for. We might get embarrassed.
Yeah, the other thing that was interesting was Ali brought it up yesterday. They have to schedule 16 non-conference games. Now
Mhm.
they'll get three of them in Maui, but they have 13 others to worry about. This year they had 11 non-con games and they had three of them in at the Battle for Atlanta. So they had to schedule eight. This year they've got to go from 8 to 13, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm dying to see what happens, but they are going to have to hit the ground running. And then, of course, the other thing is with only 16 conference games, that probably means they don't start until roughly the new year, that they won't start before Christmas or over Christmas break. That'll be good for the fans in Moby
I'm
because
all right with that. Yeah.
the crowds are lousy, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Anyway, anything else you want to add
Yeah.
before we call it a night, man?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think relativity is important. If we're all sitting here and we're kind of bummed about a top 100 team that hosted an NIT game uh, for a first year coach after losing almost your entire roster, I think that goes to show how high the bar is starting to be set for this program. And I think, we talk about that freshman to sophomore year jump for players. I'm hoping we see the same from this coaching staff next year, and if they can keep the pieces that we talked about, I mean that'll just do wonders for this program. And you're starting to see the incoming talent, specifically out of the high school ranks, starting to steadily increase. And so I think the bar is going to continue being raised. And I'm excited for it. But it's going to be, thank God we got the World Cup, because it's going to be a long off season.
Yeah. Here we go. Please schedule New Mexico. I hope
I,
we
I
schedule New
I bet we will.
Mexico.
I mean, you hear the way that Ollie talks about guaranteeing those quad one, quad two wins. I think we're going to see a lot of strategic home and home announcements
Yeah.
in the off season. And they're, obviously he and Olin are good buddies.
Yeah. Of course, he's bummed. He was looking at doing a home and home with St. Mary's, and now Randy Bennett's gone to Arizona State, and that's
Yeah.
probably gone out the window because once they go to the Big 12, they don't want to schedule any tough non-con games. They're not going to come to CSU out of Arizona State. So I don't know if he knows the new coach Mickey McConnell at all at St. Mary's. The other thing is it's hard to know, will that program continue to be successful, and do you really want to schedule him because he did the same thing with Loyola of Chicago and expected a good quad one, quad two game this year and got a quad four on the road. We
Yeah.
have Loyola Chicago coming here next year. That's part of the home and home. So that'll
Yeah.
be another quad four unless they get things turned around. So anyway, here we go. Here's another retention for coaching staff. I hope. Who knows? We lost obviously a bunch with Nico, but built the staff up, and the chemistry is really good. They're great guys, but you never know. Somebody might get a great offer and might decide to move on. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've cultivated a pretty solid coaching tree. Congrats to J.R. Blunt getting that USD job, and, Cooley and Katsuma up in Minnesota, and, the staff that we've got. It's a well regarded coaching tree.
Yeah, here we go. Here's another comment. Olin, worried about Olin to St. Mary's. I'm going to give you my insight into Olin because Utah State is talking about him as a candidate. I do not see him as a person going to Logan. I don't think he's going to leave Albuquerque unless he gets to go back to the beach in California. I'll just leave it at that. That's just my read on the situation. He's a beach guy. He's in Albuquerque. He's going to build the Lobos up, and then he'll take over the UCLA or USC job, depending on which place decides that those guys are not doing as well as they need to be doing in the Big Ten. So anyway, that's my take on it. I think Olin is going to stay in Albuquerque for a few years. So anyway, it's time to call it a night, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button. Jake, once again, thank you for joining me. We went a little bit over, but it's always fun having you. Let's keep in touch, and
Absolutely.
maybe we'll figure out a way to get together sometime before the season starts next year and talk a little more. All righty.
For sure. Hopefully we're talking about a lot of the same names, but it will be fun regardless. So
You got it. Anyway, thanks, Jakes. Thank everybody. Have a great
thanks, Steve.
evening. Go Rams.